For the last 15 years, he's been helping women from the Democratic Republic of Congo who've been mutilated in the most intimate way. Dr. Denis Mukwege is a gynecologist forced by a distressing state of affairs to specialise in reconstructive surgery. The European Parliament has chosen him to be the recipient of this year's Sakharov Prize for freedom of thought. Denis Mukwege, thank you for being with us. The Sakharov Prize is far from being the first you've won. Many others have preceded it. What use are all these medals and prizes when you're confronted every day with the worst of what man can do?
Well, we need this solidarity expressed by European states to fight this evil that we've seen arrive in the Congo, and now today the violent rape of women in times of conflict is tending to become a generalized thing. I think it's extremely dangerous to use this as a weapon because it's an arm that destroys all humanity.
You've cared for more than 40,000 women and girls at your hospital since you opened it 15 years ago. What are they victims of?
These are women who've been raped, often in public, in front of their husbands, in front of their children. And then after this collective rape, they're tortured genitally. Women come to see me because they have serious physical injuries afterwards.
These acts are sometimes surreal in their sadism, with stakes being used or shards of bottles, gun barrels. Who commits these atrocities and why?
Unfortunately, in the Congo, in the eastern part, there are many armed groups from Burundi, Rwanda or Uganda. They associate with local armed gangs of youths we call the Mai Mai. They get brainwashed to go on the rampage and destroy everything, raise entire communities, so they leave the land, and the gunmen then move in to exploit it.
You refer to Kivu, the eastern region where the DRC has suffered from 20 years of violence. Armed groups fight it out for control of territory, but why? Because of the natural resources there? Can you tell us what they are and how they are linked to the plight of Kivu's women?
In fact, this part of the Congo is extremely mineral rich. There's abundant tantalite and cassiterite in high demand in the electronics industry. So when armed groups take over territory, they take over the mineral rights too, which they exploit any way they want.
Ils deviennent propriétaires non seulement du sol, mais du sous-sol qu'ils exploitent à leur gré.
This way they have of attacking women, destroying them in public, ruining their genitals in show punishments in front of everyone, is a way of terrorizing the community.
Where's the authority of the state in all of this? The army's stationed there, the UN has more than 20,000 men deployed. Does that mean they're all accomplices?
All we can say is that 12 years after the peace deal was signed, the government has yet to exert control over certain territories. Armed groups kill, rape and destroy, while the army, which is supposed to protect them, well, the women and children are still waiting for their help. The UN, I always thought the presence of the UN would help to build peace, but it will be very, very hard to put a UN soldier beside every woman and baby. Because I tell you, even babies have been victims.
Have these criminals been tried? Have they been punished? Is there any justice in Kivu?
Unfortunately, I have to say there's total impunity.
Some people, mostly women, are calling for an international criminal tribunal to be set up for Eastern Congo to put an end to this impunity. Do you support this demand?
Not only do I support it, but I've signed a petition calling for an ICT to be set up. When you start counting the numbers, the millions of deaths and hundreds of thousands of women raped, then they can no longer be ignored. We cannot continue to simply count numbers. We have to start a process that will lead to the truth coming out and justice being done. The world can today draw a red line and say in armed conflicts women should never be used as a battleground, and if anyone breaks that rule, they should be isolated from society.
You've survived an assassination attempt 2 years ago in your home. After that, you went into exile in Belgium, but 2 months later you returned home, despite your 5 children and the resumed threats, which continue. Can you imagine living anywhere else?
Vous ne concevez pas la vie ailleurs qu'au Kivu?
Les femmes congolaises se sont mobilisées.
Congo's women mobilized. They started by writing to the authorities, all of them, then the UN Secretary General and the President of the Republic, saying that I had to return, and if the state could not assure my security, then they would. They really wanted me back.
Ma sécurité, mais elles veulent absolument que je retourne au Congo. Jusque-là, je m'étais dit, bon ben.
At that point, I just thought it was an emotional response, but a month later, when they saw there was no reaction, these women started to organize, and every day they sold produce from their fields at the hospital to pay for my return ticket.
Qu'elles vendaient à l'hôpital pour qu'ils payent mon billet retour.
That really moved me. I realized their great strength, these women who lived on less than $1 a day, but who were able to club together to get me home. When I finally weighed things up, I think these women tipped it. Because I said to myself, in any case, my one life is hardly worth more than the lives of these thousands of women. So I decided to return home.
So why don't you really go to the logical conclusion of your commitment and enter politics? Because until the political battle is won, victims will continue to come to your hospital, won't they?
Unfortunately, what I've seen on my operating table, when I've seen the injuries done to babies, I do effectively feel revolted. And I tell myself this cannot be possible. This is why I decided to denounce it. But from criticizing to joining politics is a big step, and I'm not there yet.
One last question. What keeps you smiling?
Women. I cannot tell you how many times I've despaired when treating a woman, wondering how she can possibly overcome the injuries she's suffered. But they do. And they never do it for themselves. They rise again for their children and their families. I think we can learn a lot from these women.
Denis Mukwege, prix Sakharov 2014, merci d'avoir répondu à nos questions et bonne chance.
Merci.